This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with news that has saddened and infuriated many people. The body of another First Nations woman has been found in a Winnipeg landfill. Her name was Linda Mary Beardy. She was 33 years old. She is the fourth Indigenous woman whose remains are believed to have been dumped in an area landfill in just over a year. CBC's Josh Crabb reports.
33-year-old Linda Mary Beardy is a mother originally from Lake St. Martin First Nation who'd been living in Winnipeg. She was found dead here at Brady Road landfill Monday afternoon around 3, and now the site is once again the focus of homicide investigators.
Linda's next of kin has been notified, and this suspicious death investigation is being led by our homicide unit.
Winnipeg Police Service Inspector Sean Pike says staff discovered Beardy and alerted officers. Detectives say her remains were taken to the landfill by a garbage truck. Police believe she was there for a couple of hours before she was found. Pike wasn't able to say when or how she died.
We're still unpacking everything that's occurred. We're trying to work our way back in this investigation to find out exactly what circumstances caused her to end up where she was found yesterday afternoon.
At this time, officers say there's no evidence to suggest there are other victims, and there's nothing linking Beardy's death to previous investigations.
I'm angered and saddened by the news that came out today about more remains being found in the landfill.
Cambria Harris says Winnipeg police warned her ahead of time. Harris's mother, Morgan, and another woman, Mercedes Myron, are believed to be in a different landfill north of Winnipeg. Their remains haven't been recovered. Harris says she's thinking of Beardy's family.
I'm grateful that they have that closure, and it's unfortunate that her life had to end like that and end up where she did. And my heart goes out to her, and you know, this is traumatizing for all of us.
Rebecca Contois' remains were found in Brady Road landfill in June of 2022. Police believe Contois, Harris, Myron, and a fourth woman, known as Buffalo Woman, are the victims of an alleged serial killer. The chief of Sandy Bay First Nation, Trevor Prince, knew Beardy and calls her death devastating.
She was a caring, loving mother.
Operations at the entire landfill have been put on pause while police continue to investigate. Community members are turning their attention to remembering Beardy and supporting her family. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The discovery of another Indigenous woman in an area landfill is provoking outrage and sadness. Political leaders urged Manitobans today not to grow complacent about the treatment of First Nations women.
We as a society can never grow numb to this. This is horrible. We should never, for lack of a term, get used to this. This always needs to spark within us outrage, concern, grief.
It's tragedy enough when you have a death, and if it's committed by a crime, but it's compounded in the way in which the individuals then their remains are found.
There's something so enraging and devastating and surreal about being here again and talking about the disposal of Indigenous woman in another garbage fill. It's absolutely devastating.
This story could be particularly triggering for many people. If you or someone you know need emotional assistance, call 1-844-413-6649. That's a 24-hour 7-day-a-week toll-free crisis line. You'll find the number, if you need it later today or any other time, at the bottom of the Linda Beardy story on our website. You could also search MMIWG support line. We have been bringing you lots of stories about the shortages of family doctors here in Manitoba and indeed across the country. More than 6 million Canadians do not have a primary care physician. That's 1 in 5 people. Provincial governments, including Manitoba, are opening up more training spaces. But new data shows medical students just don't seem to be interested. Karen Pauls reports.
The process to becoming a family doctor starts when graduating medical students apply to the residency programs where they'll learn a specialty. But there's a problem.
Over the last 5 years, we've seen a decline in the number of learners that identify family medicine as their first choice. It's about 30% right now.
Here's how the process works. The Canadian Resident Matching Service, or CARMS, uses an algorithm to correlate each student's list of preferred specialties and locations with the top choices of each residency program. Matches are made and futures are secured. It's a big deal because doctors can't get licensed without finishing a residency. But this year, after the first of 2 matchups, there was a surprising number of family medicine spots left open. 268. That's raised a lot of concern across the country. For example, Alberta, with 42 vacancies, has its highest unmatched spots in a decade.
The feeling that it isn't as prestigious or as valued or pays as well. The burden on family physicians administratively and how challenging the work is with a population that's getting older and more complex. So it does scare people away.
Monty Hackett did match to a family medicine program this year, but he knows most young doctors would rather do something else.
We need to make family practice more attractive as an option for medical students.
But every year there are also doctors who go unmatched.
These are the list of all the programs that I applied to.
Dr. Sajid Jabberi graduated from medical school in the United Arab Emirates in 2017. She moved to Canada and applied to get into family medicine along with other specialties. But when the match results came out, she was left out.
I didn't match.
The same thing happened in 2021, 2022, and again in the first match this year. Just like a dating service, the program she picks also have to pick her.
I don't want to get my hopes up and get disappointed all over again.
Jabberi has applied to all of the empty residency spots in the second match. She's also considering moving to the United States.
I do wish to be able to practice and do what I love most.
It's clear something has to change because Canada isn't training as many family doctors as it could be, even as millions of Canadians don't have access to one. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba election is less than 6 months away. Today, we saw our first debate. The leaders of the Progressive Conservatives, NDP, and Liberals tangled at an Association of Manitoba Municipalities gathering. The president of the association called it salty. Our Ian Fraze was there.
The leaders of Manitoba's 3 main political parties did not hold back. The premier said it was a debate between the facts of her government's accomplishments and fiction.
Let's not let my opponents fearmonger. We're better than that.
It led to some testy moments.
Well, here's a fact. The PCs have cut health care, and you've all seen it in many of your local communities.
With opinion polls showing the NDP ahead of the governing Progressive Conservatives, all parties promised more money for health care. The NDP says they'll offer bonuses for staff in rural Manitoba. The party says it can afford this by cutting.
It's time that we cut the bureaucracy, starting at shared health, and reinvest the savings at the front lines in communities like yours.
Shared Health spends $75 million annually on administration, a small fraction of the $7+ billion that's going to healthcare this year. PC leader Heather Stephenson isn't convinced the NDP can follow through.
Well, it's very easy for an opposition party, and I spent some time there myself, to get up and say whatever they want and promise the moon. Okay, but he doesn't explain how he's going to go about doing that.
The debate was hosted by the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. The PCs ended the long-standing municipal funding freeze recently. The NDP's Wab Canoe joked about his promise a year ago to do the same.
So on a lighthearted note, I view this as the first Manitoba NDP 2023 campaign commitment that's been fulfilled.
One even wants to take credit for the action that I have taken and our government has taken.
Liberal leader Dougal Lamont says Stephenson isn't excused from the government's mistakes under Brian Pallister.
She did not emerge from the wilderness or from outside of the party to suddenly take it over. And so at this point, in a sense, the government is running against itself and its own record.
The next election is slated for October 3rd. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Weather specialist Marjorie Dowhos joins us now on a day filled with watches and warnings.
Oh, yes. We've actually seen a little bit of a change in those watches and warnings. All the watches have been dropped for Manitoba. It's all warnings now. Yeah, and I'm going to show you here in the satellite radar where exactly this Colorado low is, but here is your winter storm warning. You can see just how big an area this Colorado low is going to impact. Look at northwestern Ontario, most of it lit up in that yellow. That is a winter storm warning. Taking a closer look here at southern Manitoba, Brandon was actually a winter storm watch earlier this afternoon. That has since been dropped. You can see here, this is all a warning here. So this stretches as far east as Boissevain, and it actually stretches all the way to the border there with northwestern Ontario. We are looking at some heavy snowfall and strong winds here. So where exactly is this system? Well, it spent most of the day in North Dakota, and you can see it's starting to move into Manitoba. It just did in the last hour, the southeastern corner there. This will start to make its way further up into the Winnipeg area later on this evening and, of course, intensify overnight. I'm going to show you that coming up in Futurecast, but right now in Winnipeg, it is cloudy. -2 right now. That is our daytime high. Wind out of the northeast at about 26 kilometers per hour. Okay, so here is how long this weather event is going to last. So it's starting to push in now. It will continue to bring some heavy snowfall here to Winnipeg, parts of southern Manitoba overnight, and it's going to continue to swirl over us here on Wednesday, bringing more snow. It actually will not start to break up till about Thursday. We can still expect to see some light flurries overnight Thursday into Thursday morning, but this Colorado low really starts to clear out and move out to the east late Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. Here are the projected snowfalls, and you can see just how much this is going to bring. So this is, again, starting from Tuesday evening, stretching all the way into Thursday. This is a ceiling, really, for Winnipeg, 30 centimeters. We're potentially looking more like 15 centimeters of snow. You can see that it's going to be heavier out to the southeast. Piney, Sprague, Pinawa, 20 centimeters. Northwestern Ontario, take a look at this. Looking at about 40 centimeters again. This is a ceiling between Tuesday to Thursday, looking more like 30 centimeters. Associated with this system, strong winds gusting out of the north, at times gusting 40 to 60. So again, that will affect visibility as that wind blows around that snow. That's going to affect you if you're driving, but really driving is not recommended in these conditions. -7, our overnight low, 5 centimeters of snow overnight here in Winnipeg. We're going to hold steady at that temperature. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning as that snow and blowing snow continues. 10 more centimeters tomorrow and a high of -5. Long range forecast. So as that low pressure system starts to swirl over us, move out by Thursday, ridge of high pressure starts to settle in time for the long weekend. So we're looking at sunshine and just a little bit of a warm up, Janet, but still not close to seasonal, which should be around 7 degrees for this time of year.
Okay. Thank you, Marjorie. We'll talk to you a little later in the show. 26 years ago tomorrow, the blizzard of '97 hit Manitoba. That's an infamous storm, the weather event that set up the flood of the century. Ironically, it happened on April 5th, the same day as we are expecting the worst of tomorrow's storm, the first spring storm of this year. Now, don't worry, that's about the only thing they share. We're expecting much less snow this time around, and our flood mitigation measures can't be compared. We're much safer now than we were in '97, so don't panic. But still, just because it's fun to dig in the archives, we thought we'd show you what that storm looked like with this story from former CBC national reporter Reg Sharon.
It's over, but just barely. What Winnipeggers hope is the last slap in the face from an unusually cruel winter. While some people were busy today snowboarding off their roofs, others were trying to get to work and wondering what they did to deserve this.
Typical Winnipeg, what can you say?
Did something wrong, I guess, eh? Maybe we're not living right or something.
For 2 days, it did nothing but snow and blow, throwing most of the province into chaos. In rural Manitoba, highways were shut down, hydro lines snapped, and hundreds of travelers were stranded at the border. Driving on city streets yesterday, nearly impossible. Today, an adventure. Emergency services needed an escort. Even then, no guarantees.
Just ridiculous. You're getting stuck all over the place, and it's a lot harder now, too. Now it's packed solid, so it's harder to get in.
Inside, another heart attack victim. There have been several. At least one person has died trying to shovel out. Now the temperature has dropped. As a result, the snow is like concrete. But for some, that's not even the worst of it. Here's the problem. Underneath all this snow, sandbags. Sandbags that are now pretty much useless. Jim Shapiro has 11,000 frozen solid on his front lawn. With record flooding expected this spring, he was rushing to get them in place. Now he's really worried.
We're also facing financial ruin also. This situation is going to cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
City officials forced to divert flood crews to snow removal say this is going to hurt.
And the amount of precipitation we got, it's certainly safe to say, is not going to help the flood situation.
Just how bad won't be known until the melt begins. But as if to add insult to injury, that won't happen for a while. Temperatures are expected to remain below freezing until at least the end of the week. Red Sharon, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump pleaded not guilty today to charges of falsifying business records. We'll have the latest on this saga when we come back. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Former U.S. President Donald Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 charges of falsifying business records today in New York. Charges that stem from alleged hush money payments made to 2 women in 2016, one of them an adult film star. Prosecutors claim it was a cover-up meant to hide Trump's extramarital affairs during his first presidential campaign. The former U.S. president denies any wrongdoing. Travis Danraj reports.
Stunning, historic, whatever the adjective, words seem to fail this moment in American history. Images did not. A solemn former president cocooned by security walking into a Manhattan courthouse. Inside, a new low. Donald Trump was fingerprinted, processed, the first president to become a criminal defendant. Trump pled not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg laying out the details.
34 false statements made to cover up other crimes. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are.
Today's unsealing of this indictment shows that the rule of law died in this country, because while everyone is not above the law, no one's below it either.
For the country he once led, this moment will no doubt further carve out an ever-growing divide.
It's a witch hunt. It's all political.
This is a charge that they're giving him right now.
Let's start from there and then go on to the other charges. It just shows that he's a liar. He's hiding stuff.
Justice right here.
What kind of president is that?
In what is the ongoing drama of the Trump reality show, USA! What comes next is unknown. His legal challenges in New York, Georgia, and elsewhere are mounting.
President Trump.
But tonight, in the face of it all, defiance, a rally at Mar-a-Lago to line the coffers. Millions already raised for his 2024 campaign since his indictment. After all of this, it's hard to fathom Donald Trump could ever hold public office again. However, he and his supporters are resolute. He will once again sit behind that historic desk in the Oval Office. Travis Danraj, CBC News at the White House.
Today, Finland became the 31st member of NATO. And as we hear from Susan Ormiston, that move has already drawn heat from Russia.
The image NATO wanted, a brilliant day, showcasing renewed solidarity, not the splintering the Russian president had predicted.
This is an historic day. We welcome Finland as the newest member of our alliance.
Finland welcomed on NATO's 74th birthday a strategic partner, which in effect doubles NATO's land border with Russia by about 1,300 kilometers, increasing its strength and proximity to Russia, exactly what Vladimir Putin had warned against.
Finland is safer and NATO is stronger with Finland as an ally.
Canada welcomed NATO's 31st member.
Finland is a plus to the alliance. And for Canada, why is it important? It is also an Arctic nation. And we want to make sure that as Arctic nations are addressing some of the security challenges that we're facing.
Historically, Finland was non-aligned militarily. But the brutal and brazen war with Ukraine changed all that.
Russia showed that it was willing to attack a much larger neighbor in Ukraine compared to Finland. If the Kremlin were to be, I have to say, stupid enough to attack Finland, this time or next time, it wouldn't be just Finland fighting, but collectively over 30 countries.
Just 5 years ago, Helsinki hosted the Trump-Putin summit, where Trump famously said he trusted Putin over the U.S.'s intelligence agency. But Russia has squandered trust amongst the Finns.
I think it's excellent news, and I think Finland has waited for it.
But in St. Petersburg, Russia, Finland is making problems for itself, says this man. It used to be a brotherly neighbor, and now it's unfriendly.
NATO had hoped it would be welcoming 2 new members, but Turkey and Hungary are still blocking Sweden's application, hoping to extract some concessions. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, London.
One person has died and dozens have been injured after a train crash in the Netherlands. Quite a mess, as you can see. That passenger train smashed into a maintenance crane on the tracks. The collision sent several cars barreling into a field. One of those cars burst into flames. Passengers had to climb out of the windows to escape. Officials are investigating why the crane was on the tracks and whether a second train was involved. Food banks across Canada say they're in crisis. That's the warning from one of the country's largest groups. Toronto's Daily Bread Food Bank says use is at record levels. Lisa Shing has more.
A few times a week, Sue Ellen Patchison heads out early and makes her way here, where she volunteers.
Good morning.
It's also where she gets a week's worth of rice and veggies.
With the food bank's help, we're able to eat meat 4 times a month.
According to one of Canada's largest food banks, there are more people like Patchison than ever before.
We are in a crisis.
Toronto's Daily Bread Food Bank saw more visits last month than ever in its 40-year history. With many incomes falling behind inflation, the food bank is calling on Ontario to top up social assistance.
We know the policies to be implemented. Now you need the leadership and courage to be able to implement those policies.
Some have criticized the federal government's new one-time grocery rebate for low-income earners as not going far enough.
Canada is strong economically. We have a strong balance sheet, but our resources aren't infinite.
Advocates say the best fix would be to tie social assistance to inflation.
It's always been clear that those income supports were insufficient. They've just gotten more insufficient over these last few months.
Researchers say provinces like New Brunswick, Quebec, and British Columbia are making some progress, while Nova Scotia and Ontario are lagging behind.
Alberta has announced it will re-index its programs in its latest budget, but there's doubt that will happen fast enough.
The trends that we're seeing continue to be increased demand and decreased donations.
Even so, Patchison says she's lucky.
Most days we eat maybe 1 meal, occasionally 2 meals a day. There's a lot of people who are a lot worse off than I am, a lot worse off.
A stark reminder of just how much some are struggling. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The head of Amnesty International Canada is accusing Air Canada of racism and discrimination. She says she was denied boarding when she tried to get on a flight to Mexico recently, even though she had all the necessary documents and is a permanent resident with official refugee status. CBC's Nicole Williams has the details.
Keti Nivyabandi travels a lot for her work. The Secretary General of Amnesty International Canada is originally from Burundi. She came to Canada several years ago as a refugee and is now a permanent resident here. She uses a government-issued refugee travel document instead of a passport because she's not yet a Canadian citizen. Last week, she went to the Ottawa airport to check into a flight to Mexico to attend a human rights conference there. But when she presented her paperwork, the Air Canada agent quickly became confused.
He seemed to have never seen a travel document of the sort.
After speaking with the agent, a manager who then called another agent on the phone, Nivyabandi was denied boarding because she didn't have a visa to enter Mexico.
I was shocked. I felt humiliated. I had been standing at that counter for over an hour.
Nivyabandi says she traveled to the same destination for the same purpose with the same airline in October. Even an email from the Mexican embassy confirmed she didn't need a visa.
I think the worst part is coming home to your children. My kids came home and found me home and said, "Mom, you didn't leave." I said, "No, they wouldn't let me board." And what does that tell my children as well? About who is allowed to board and who's allowed to fly and how people are treated.
Air Canada has since apologized to Nivyabandi, but it's also defending its actions. In a statement, it says travel rules are complex, especially with less commonly used travel documents. Airlines are also subject to penalty if they allow someone to fly without proper documentation. Air Canada now has the correct information, and Nivyabandi was able to fly a day later.
I think it's just another example of barriers that refugees face and something that we need to look at as best we we can. It's, of course, it's not Canada's rules, it's the rules of the countries that people are trying to travel to. But perhaps there's more that we could be doing to ensure that these issues don't come up.
But the Secretary General says what happened to her shows just how much the rules are subject to interpretation, and she wants Air Canada to do better. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
A new study raises red flags about how Canadians use cannabis for medical reasons. It shows self-diagnosis, sourcing cannabis from unregulated suppliers. We'll hear from the principal investigator when we return. A new national survey on cannabis use shows many Canadians are self-diagnosing and using cannabis for medical reasons. Linda Ball-Neves is the lead principal investigator. She is an associate professor at the College of Nursing in the Rady Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Manitoba. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much, Janet.
Why did you want to conduct this survey?
You know, we knew that there was going to be a 5-year review of the Cannabis Act and regulations after legalization in 2018, and we wanted to ensure that Canadians' perspectives, experiences, and voices around the medical cannabis program would be represented in that review. And so we undertook this large national survey to ensure that we had a good sense of what was working for them and where there might need to be some revisions to the policy and the current programming.
So what did you find?
You know, what we found is that most individuals were saying that medical cannabis was very to extremely effective in managing a whole host of symptoms, things like agitation, nausea and vomiting, appetite, people that were living with seizures because of epilepsy, and that very few people had serious side effects. You know, we saw a lot of side effects like cough or tiredness. But what really was striking, though, is that we had almost half of the sample that were not getting medical authorization. So they weren't consulting a physician or a nurse practitioner to talk about their medical cannabis use and getting that medical document, which meant that they could access their cannabis through the legal medical cannabis program.
Why is that a concern? Because there are cannabis stores everywhere.
Exactly. I think the concern is when you're using it for medical purposes, you're really wanting to ensure that they're having that conversation about the potential benefits and the risks. A lot of our participants were using it alongside other medications, so talking about potential interactions, you know, with cannabis and using various drugs. The other thing, too, is that people that didn't have that medical authorization weren't as certain of how much cannabis they were using. And because there can be side effects attached to it, it's important that you actually know the dosage that you're using. And I think the most scary part of this is that people that did not have that medical authorization, they were more likely to actually seek and obtain cannabis from the unregulated market. So through family and friends, through dealers, and that cannabis hasn't been regulated, and there's always that potential for contamination or being uncertain about how much THC and CBD is in that product.
Well, I know we hear a lot in Winnipeg these days about tainted street drugs. Could cannabis be tainted as well with something like, heaven forbid, fentanyl?
Yeah, you know, there's been that conversation for many, many years. We fortunately in Canada have never had a single documented instance of that happening. I'm usually more concerned when we're talking about people living with chronic health conditions of being exposed to things like bacteria, fungi, perhaps other medications that could be, or other kind of contaminants like pesticides and herbicides that could be in that product. And if people have a suppressed immune system, they could be really susceptible to poor health outcomes as a consequence.
How much do we know medically about cannabis? Do we need more studies to know really what its medical efficacy is for certain conditions?
Most definitely. You know, we just had a clinical guidelines on cannabis that was released this week. However, we need so many more clinical trials. If you just think about how many different cannabis products and dosages that are out there, and then think about all the different health conditions that people are using it for, we need a whole, you know, cadre of clinical trials to be conducted. You know, and health professionals that were really reluctant to give medical authorizations, one of their concerns that were reported by our participants is that there is not enough evidence at this time, or that they haven't been actually educated about medical cannabis and how it can be used properly. So we have a ways to go to build the evidence and then translating that to our health professionals.
Linda Balnews, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Weather specialist Marjorie Dowhos joins us again. You were just checking some live cameras down south of the border. What did you see?
Yeah, well, that Colorado low has actually been sitting over North Dakota for most of the day. There's already some highway closures in the Fargo area. I-29 is closed down. Looking at that camera, you can see that the wind is blowing that snow around. Those cameras are wet. Those highways look pretty icy. They're snow covered. So you can just imagine how that's going to impact Manitoba here. Let's take a look right now at the satellite radar and let's see where this Colorado low is right now. So again, it continues to swirl over North Dakota. It is actually now pushed into Manitoba. You can see here in the southeastern corner of the province. Current conditions right now. So we have some cloud cover here in the south. A little bit clearer up north. Right now in Winnipeg, -2 at the airport, -2 at the Forks. Mostly cloudy at this hour in Brandon at -6. All of southern Manitoba right now under a cloudy sky. -5 in Morden, Winkler, -3 in Portage, -5 in Sprague right now. Pinawa mild, -1. Also mild up north. Sunshine for you right now in Thompson at -1. Clear sky in the Paw, -4. A little bit more cloud cover in Flin Flon. Cloudy for you in Churchill at this hour and -6. Snow. Northwestern Ontario, you're going to see quite a bit of it tonight. You can see Fort Frances looking at anywhere between 10 to 15 centimeters of snow. Overnight low of -7. 5 to 10 centimeters expected overnight in Kenora at -8. Snow here in Winnipeg and the Red River Valley. Overnight low of -8 in Steinbach. You're looking potentially at 10 centimeters of snow. You can see how the southeast is also going to see quite a bit of snow overnight here. 10 to 15 centimeters overnight in Sprague, a low of -8. -8 overnight in Emerson, -7 here in Winnipeg. The snow is going to be a little bit lighter in the Brandon area as that winter storm watch was dropped for you earlier today. 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, of course, blowing snow, that northeast wind at times gusting to 16, overnight low of -10. Increasing cloud in Dauphin, -16 overnight in Swan River. Up north, there is the risk of frostbite in Thompson. Looking at a low of -21, -19 in Churchill, clearing out overnight in Flin Flon and the Paw. Overnight lows around -18, -19. Starting off with the risk of frostbite in Thompson, tomorrow's that wind chill feels like -30 to start off your day. High of -1, -8 in Churchill. Looking at 0 in Flin Flon, -1 in the Paw. In the southwestern corner of the province, you're going to continue to see snow in Brandon, a high of -5. 5 more centimeters you're expecting there. 10 centimeters in Portage and Morden, highs of -6. Snow continues here in Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, and southeastern Manitoba. 10 centimeters here for much of the region. Pinawa, 10 to 15 centimeters expected, and a high of -4. And northwestern Ontario, you're expecting anywhere between 10 to 20 more centimeters of snow. High of -2 in Fort Frances, -6 in Kenora, -5 in Dryden. So, Janet, we're seeing snow all around with the exception of the north, but risk of frostbite there to start off your day tomorrow.
Oh, great. Thank you, Marjorie. Thanks for the warning. So do dress warmly if you're in the areas with risk of frostbite. And if snow falls heavily where you are, please remember it will be the wet, heavy kind. So take it easy. Take breaks when you're shoveling. Try not to twist. Don't hurt yourself. You know, a lot of people have been complaining about this spring. How cold it was. Now we've got the snow coming. We couldn't help but wonder how this spring really does compare with those we've seen in the past. We already saw that archival footage from 1997. CBC's Joanne Roberts takes a more all-inclusive look back at some of our extreme spring weather.
Here in Manitoba, winter just seems to not want to let go.
Oh my God, when is it ever going to end?
I hate snow. Does this look like springtime to you?
No.
As southern Manitoba prepares for a Colorado low.
A Colorado low brings hazardous winter weather lasting for several days.
That will bring us 15 to 25 centimeters of snow. We're going to take a look at how this spring measures up against Manitoba's worst springs with the help of the senior climatologist at Environment Canada.
Worst spring ever.
We are expecting a lot of snow today, but how does that compare to?
You know, I think we've known Colorado lows for a long time, but I think it was that one, Joanne, that really struck fear in the hearts of Manitobans, because it really brought, it was like 4 days. It began on the 4th of April and went right through to the 8th or to the 7th. And we had, in fact, I think in total, about 48 centimeters of snow.
48 centimeters in 1997 versus up to 25 today. All right, well, I guess 1997 wins the snowiest spring. But what about the coldest spring?
Boy, 1996 was a much colder spring. That March that year there were over half the days were below -20.
Around 7 days in 1996 to 6 days this year. Well, I would call this one a tie. But what about the wettest spring?
And then we got to March, April, May. That spring was 3.5 times the amount of precipitation you normally would get in the springtime. And you had, of course, it resulted in flooding, not just in the Red River, but every river in Manitoba.
So it's a little too soon to tell, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that wet outside this year. So verdict, this year's looking pretty good. But have you heard of Manitoba's most bizarre spring?
There were spring dust storms. They called them black blizzards on the prairies. But on that day, it was actually at noon in Winnipeg. It was like midnight. You couldn't see anything. You couldn't see the street lights. Birds returned to their nests. Women walking along Portage Avenue were caked in mud.
Now that we have better soil management, the dust storms that were popular through the 1930s aren't really an issue today. And I think that's a good thing because I don't know about you, but I would take a snowstorm over a dust storm any day. Verdict, we have nothing over the 1930s. We've seen some pretty intense storms here in Manitoba, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this one is not going to be a record-breaking year.
A new free program aims to get women into welding. We'll bring you details after the break. If you know any women looking for a job or a career change, send them the link to this next interview on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Red River College Polytechnic is offering a free 17-week program this spring to teach females welding. RRCP's Chair of Manufacturing told me about it this afternoon. Shylight Bloodworth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me to discuss this great opportunity with you, Janet.
It's a great opportunity, you say, and you would know because you yourself are a Red Seal welder.
I am.
In fact, we have video from 3 or 4 years ago, and that is you there welding. I'm a little disappointed in our interview today you don't have the helmet on.
No, I've changed roles slightly here at RRC Polytech, and I'm currently the manager, while moving into a management position here as the chair of the manufacturing department.
As a woman with experience in the field, though, as a welder, how does it feel to have this Women of Steel program at your fingertips about to happen?
I am so excited. I can't even start to explain how excited I am. So we're partnering with the CWB Welding Foundation, and this Women of Steel Forging Forward project will help us remove some barriers that women are experiencing when pursuing careers in the trades.
Like what? Which barriers?
Well, so for some of them, sometimes it's tuition. So by offering a tuition-free offering, which we wouldn't be able to do without great partners with the Government of Canada. They've got Canada's Employment Readiness Pilot Program, and this is allowing us to, offer it tuition-free. The ladies just need to get here, and tuition's covered, books are covered, supplies are covered. So it's just a matter of them getting here, and we're going to be able to offer this really great program for them to explore welding and working in welding-related skilled trades.
Okay, so there's a big push to get women in this field then, to offer it. It's a completely free program?
Completely free. They just need to get in the door.
Why the push? Like, why is it so important to get women into welding?
Well, and I mean, I know you've been talking about this over this last week. As more skilled tradespeople are looking to retire locally, but also across the country, there is a huge labor gap that is just getting larger and larger. And so this means that there's opportunities in the career, for careers in this industry. And I know some of the companies, especially in southern Manitoba, they just can't get enough welders.
So I know that there are still some barriers on trade sites. I've been told that washrooms are sometimes far away or just not as clean as some women would like them, that there is still some sexism on trade sites. What would you say to women who are scared of those barriers?
I always encourage anybody that's looking to get into the trades to not let things like that dissuade you. I myself started in the trade in '99, and things have definitely improved, but there are some situations that we still need to work on.
But doesn't sound like much of a pep talk. What are the good things about being a welder?
Career opportunities. I mean, that's the big thing for me, and that was why I got into it. Well-paying, stable career opportunities, lots of opportunity to transfer from one trade to another. Where people start off, I mean, I started off in the manufacturing industry. I went into aerospace, did some construction, and it led to me coming here at RSC Polytech as an instructor. So there's so many great opportunities, and it's kind of like the sky's the limit once you get your foot in the door.
What are wages like?
Tough to say. I mean, it depends from industry to industry. On the manufacturing side, people could be coming straight out of school anywhere from $18 to $26 an hour. And again, more experience, more opportunities, more money. And so a lot of people, once you get your red seal, or if you've been in the company for, 10 plus years, it's not unrealistic to get, into that six-figure income.
So what do women do if they're listening and they want to get involved, they want to learn more?
So for this program here, interested applicants can get more information on the rrc.ca website, and that includes information about admission requirements. They can also register for a virtual information session by emailing welding@rrc.ca, and a Zoom link will be sent to them in advance of this final info session that we're going to be offering at noon on April 6th.
Coming up on Thursday. Shylight Bloodworth, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Janet.
The Chair of Manufacturing at RRC Polytechnic. Your 7-day forecast and daily lift when we come back.
So the main event begins here tonight in Winnipeg. We are looking at snow all day on Wednesday. Start to taper off. That Colorado low moves out on Thursday. Ridge of high pressure settles in time for the long weekend, but below seasonal temperatures. But look at that, Janet, on Tuesday, potentially double digits. So spring should be coming. Don't worry. You know what Winnipeggers find uplifting, besides the fact that we have double digits temperatures on the way? A good deal. Zellers has returned to Winnipeg.
It's inside the Bay store at St. Vital Centre. Our Jim Agapito went to this store within a store to ask shoppers what they think. Here is your Daily Lift.
Why are you so excited about Zellers? I loved Zellers when I was younger, so it makes me feel good to have it back again. Why are you here at Zellers?
You know why? My grandma worked here for how many? 30 years. So I'm here to revisit, and we're taking photos for her, and we're gonna shop for the kids.
The lowest price is the law?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. My kids were young then. I used to come here for, good clothes that were so expensive, so it was good.
How do you feel about Zellers being back?
Quite excited. Yep, I think everybody is.
Are you excited that it's back?
Yeah, good for Zellers, It's Canadian, right? So let's keep it rolling that way.
I used to like shopping at Zellers, so I'm just looking for maybe the same prices.
There's a lot of more name brand clothes in here, a little bit better quality maybe, but prices still look really good.
It's maybe a little lower priced, some stuff. Everything is expensive now today.
Are you finding any good deals?
I'm not looking for deals today. I'm just casing the joint.
I love that, casing the joint. That's fantastic. Good to see it.
Yeah, it is good to see it. I'll be curious to check it out. Yeah. Thanks for being with us. Drive safely. Give yourself lots of time to get to work tomorrow morning for sure. See you tomorrow. Good night.